The Industrial Revolution took generations. We've got just years. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're looking at a warning that is literally sending shockwaves through the absolute highest levels of global economics and policy. We're talking about a macroeconomic transformation that could bring structural change on a scale larger than anything we've seen in modern history. But it's happening in just a fraction of the time. Now, this isn't some tech blog making bold claims for clicks, and it's definitely not a single outspoken tech CEO hyping up a new product line. What we're breaking down today is a direct, incredibly urgent message from some of the most credentialed, rigorous economic minds on the planet. They are essentially telling governments to prepare right now or get completely crushed by the consequences. So we're going to unpack exactly what they said, the hard data driving their alarm, and most importantly, why every single bit of this matters to you. 16. I really want you to just sit with that number for a second. That is the number of Nobel Laureates who have put their personal signatures on a single, unified warning. 16 individuals who've won the highest possible global honor for their rigorous, lifelong studies of how economies actually function. These are scholars who've dedicated their entire lives to understanding labor markets, technological disruption, you name it. They do not put their names on something lightly, and they certainly don't do it to chase headlines. When 16 Nobel laureates speak with one voice on a single issue, it's a massive signal. It means the data is pointing somewhere they simply cannot ignore. And they aren't alone. Add to that number 200. This isn't just a handful of concerned academics in a room somewhere. This is a formidable coalition of over 200 world-class economists and top-tier AI researchers. These are people whose entire careers are built on analyzing hard data, economic trends, and actual technological capabilities. The level of credibility here is just staggering. It makes it abundantly clear that the warnings we're about to discuss are grounded in rigorous analysis, not science fiction, and definitely not tech bro hype. Honestly, these are the people who build the models that central banks and governments use to literally run the world. Okay, let's dive into this source document. The foundation for this entire explainer is an open letter organized by Stanford University's Digital Economy Lab. Now, this wasn't some press release meant to go viral on social media. No, this was an urgent document released directly to policymakers, government officials, and technology leaders. It was designed to completely bypass the usual public noise and land right on the desks of the people who write the laws and manage our global economies. The folks at Stanford pulled together this incredible roster of minds because they realized something crucial was missing. The conversation around artificial intelligence was missing its absolute most critical element, the immediate macroeconomic fallout. The core warning of this Stanford letter is basically a tale of two timelines. Look, the experts agree that AI is going to grow far more capable over the coming decade, driving a massive global transformation. But here's the defining difference. The Industrial Revolution reshaped economies, labor markets, entire societies, but it took generations to fully play out. Our ancestors had time. It was a really difficult time, sure, but they had time to transition from the blacksmith forge to the assembly line. Over decades, new industries slowly emerged as old ones declined. Our education systems organically evolved to meet new demands, and modern labor movements formed. But the AI revolution? It's on track to drive a comparable, if not much larger, scale of change, but it's doing so in a matter of just a few years. That brings us to a critical concept we really need to deeply understand here: compression. This is an economy-wide transformation happening so fast that old industries decline before new safety nets can even evolve. This intense temporal compression is exactly what makes AI fundamentally different from every previous wave of technological disruption in human history. Think about it. When change happens over 50 years, society can organically absorb the shock. But when you take that exact same volume of change and compress it into a 5 or 10-year window, the systemic shock is immense. The institutions we rely on simply aren't built to pivot that quickly. They traditionally move at the speed of paperwork, right? Not processors. Unless they're aggressively forced to adapt ahead of time, they are going to break under the pressure. And this brilliantly illustrates what makes this letter so notable. Because despite the heavy warnings and all this talk of institutional strain, these 200 economists actually do not view this as a doomsday prophecy. They explicitly frame this moment as a fork in the road, not a predetermined disaster. They're looking at the economic models and seeing two very distinct paths forward. The letter isn't saying that AI is definitely going to be catastrophic for the working and middle class. Instead, it's saying that our outcome depends entirely on the choices being made right now. It is a critical, highly actionable turning point for us. To really understand that fork in the road, we have to look at the two opposing outcomes they neutrally lay out. On one side, we have the immense risk of large-scale job displacement. This could potentially affect far more workers, far faster, than our global economies have historically ever had to absorb. But on the exact same token, on the other side, there is the opportunity for unprecedented, major gains in living standards. If it's managed well, AI could unlock hyper-personalized medicine. It could solve complex global supply chain bottlenecks and just elevate the baseline of human wealth across the board. The economists make it crystal clear, though. We only get that second outcome if we are fully prepared for the first one. Because of those dual possibilities, the letter's central demand isn't even a specific piece of legislation. It is urgency itself. These laureates and experts are demanding that policymakers and tech leaders act right now. Not next year, not after the next election cycle, and certainly not once large-scale job losses have already started showing up in the monthly unemployment data. If we wait until the disruption is clearly visible in the statistics, while the window to manage the transition smoothly will have already completely closed. It's like they're saying the time to build the parachute is before you jump out of the plane, not while you're in freefall. Now, what's really interesting here is how this completely reframes the entire AI conversation. When you turn on the news, almost every AI policy debate is heavily focused on the tech side, right? Regulating specific language models, setting technical safety thresholds, or worrying about these far-off science fiction scenarios. But this Stanford letter pivots sharply away from all of that. This is a massive wake-up call for rebuilding economic and labor policy. They're basically arguing that while tech regulation is a fine discussion to have, the actual clear and present danger is an economic one. We need to be aggressively talking about the real-world economic infrastructure that keeps our society functioning on a day-to-day basis. So the crucial point is that we must focus on 4 foundational pillars of society: social safety nets, retraining infrastructure, education systems, and tax structures. Every single one of these was built for a much slower pace of change. Rebuilding them, that's a multi-year, highly complex process. You can't just snap your fingers and suddenly have an education system capable of training millions of displaced middle management workers to become AI overseers overnight. You can't casually overhaul tax and welfare structures to support an economy where AI does a massive portion of the cognitive labor. According to this letter, years are exactly what we do not have to spare, which is exactly why the blueprints for these 4 steps must be drafted immediately. You know, it's very easy to hear about 200 economists and 16 Nobel laureates and feel like this is just some purely academic conversation happening entirely above your head, locked away in policy rooms you'll never sit in. But I want to be very, very clear about this. The actual substance of this warning is deeply, undeniably personal. We are not just talking about macroeconomic graphs or abstract GDP projections here. We are talking about the very fabric of your daily life, your family's security, and your long-term future. When we really break it down, this letter is essentially begging institutions to protect your most vital personal lifelines. I want you to genuinely think about your 5-year career trajectory for a second. Will the industry you're building your life in even exist in the same way? Think about the viability of unemployment support. If a sudden, compressed wave of AI disruption hits, will the systems meant to catch you actually hold up under the weight of millions of simultaneous applications? And in many parts of the world, think about healthcare that is intrinsically tied to your employment. These aren't abstract concepts, these are the core mechanisms that keep you safe. The economists are sounding the alarm so that these systems are fortified before the economic transition hits full force. Ultimately, the Stanford letter isn't asking you, the individual, to solve this global macro shift single-handedly. It's demanding that the institutions responsible for our society stop treating this as a future problem and start treating it as a current, active emergency. Whether this era becomes a story of incredible gains in our living standards or a story of widespread, painful disruption, well, it depends entirely on the choices being made right now by those in power. We all need to be paying close attention to whether they actually step up to the plate, because the defining test is already underway. So I'll leave you with the ultimate question this explainer raises, one you should absolutely be asking yourself and your elected officials. Will your job look the same in 5 years?